TikTok. It's time to rock, ladies and gentlemen. It's officially the first show on the channel for the year. Happy New Year to everybody. I'm personally glad to be here. That it's the 5150 show with Jimmy V and Johnny C. Good to see you guys. How are you, Jimmy?
Hey guys, doing great, man. Happy to be here. 2023.
Wow, Johnny, what have you been up to, brother? You're looking good. We were talking about how good you looked.
Man.
Yeah.
Feeling better, getting there a little bit. Every day is a little bit better, but no complaints.
Do you have trouble sleeping, Johnny?
No, I take like Tylenol PM. It knocks me right out.
Good on you.
Yeah,
Good
man,
on you.
Yeah, man. Nothing wrong with that.
We're also, ladies and gentlemen, expecting Hos to jump on at some stage. If you guys follow Hos on social media, you'll be aware that he did a gig last night, and it's early in the morning in Australia. So depending on how late he stayed up last night, Jimmy and John, you know, that's probably going to depend whether or not he's going to jump on. But we're going to talk.
Was it a Van Halen related gig or just
No. It was just
the paramedics had to come for Haas at the gig because he spontaneously combusted. His hands went on fire in the middle of the show. But he's okay because he's got calluses and he's used to it happening because he was on fire last night playing there. Did you see that clip the other night from the hotel?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was incredible. I mean, I wish I could sit there and watch that whole thing. That was so good. That clip that he had on Instagram the other night. He was just cranking. They were great. The band was great. He was killing it. That was awesome.
No, Haas is one of the best, man. I'll tell that to anybody.
No doubt.
And I'm pretty picky, as John would know.
He's very, very picky. Basically, Jimmy hates everybody. It's easier to count the people that Jimmy likes because
on one finger.
Exactly. So if you know he likes you, then wow, he really likes you.
Oh my lord, my lord!
You really like me.
Yeah, we do. So, ladies and gentlemen, like I said to you guys before, it's the first show of the channel officially for the year, and you know, we've got a couple of things planned for the time that we're going to spend with you today. We're going to talk about the birthday of a great album that came out a couple of days ago, in preparation for the big party next year, guys.
40, man.
Yeah. We got to do a big blowout for that show.
Oh,
Maybe Jimmy will have to take a trip to California and find Don Landy and
I'd love to.
Kidnap him for the weekend, like Weekend at Bernie's, but Weekend at Don's or something. But we won't harm him, of course. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
But he needs to speak about about that, because that was really him and Eddie's. Alex always said it. That's the Don and Ed album, that one there. Yeah, Ed and Don, whatever. That was them, all them. I just played on it. He goes, that was them. So, but
it's an interesting album, isn't it, guys? It's an interesting album because it's the end of an era, and but pathways into the Van Halen Jimmy that came after that album. So it's a signpost. It's a signifying album, and I don't think we'll ever get tired trying to analyze it, talk about it, and try and link those dots, guys.
That album was such a snapshot in time, man. Like, I remember being in '84 I was 16. And I'd gotten into, I'd really learned about Van Halen when I was around like 13, 14. And this was like kind of like the very first album where I knew like a new album was coming out, and I was already a huge fan. I'm like, here's some new material, right? And Jump came out, and I love Jump. And I made some notes about '84 that I have on my phone, but one of the points is that, like, I loved Jump, right? And back then you didn't have it. Back then it was just you and your opinion.
Sure.
You didn't have the internet where people were, throwing shade on Jump, or I didn't even know people didn't like Jump until the internet was invented, really.
Right. Exactly.
Good point. Good point.
It's true.
It's a catchy tune. It's got a great guitar solo, flows into a tremendous keyboard solo, catchy tune, right? And you see the video of those guys just having so much fun. It's like not even a really well produced. I mean, the quality is good, but it's not like a super expensive video. It's just them in a room, basically.
That's the brilliance of it. That's the brilliance of it right there.
Yeah, that's the simplicity of it and the brilliance of it. And then I think the next song guys, hold on one second. I got to let my dog out. Hang on.
No problem. Yeah. I just want to take this opportunity quickly now, if that's okay, John, just do a quick shout out if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Nelson Rodriguez is in the chat. Charmaine Taylor is here. A very good friend of the channel, John ZD351 is here. Charles Green, Mikey Mojo, good to see you, brother. We love you. Janice Lala's here in the chat. Charles Green, another good friend of the channel. Gretch Zeppelin is here. Thank you, brother. And we got a message also from Hos saying that he's just going to unload the car. He's going to jump in here and hang out with us.
All right.
I think we also had, I missed somebody else. Johnny Heartbreaker is here as well. Good to see you guys. Thank you for letting me do a quick shout out. What were you saying, guys?
You know what? Let me. Should I wait until Haas gets on and we talk about 84? Should we talk about something else? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's wait till Haas comes on. I suppose what we should do, ladies and gentlemen, we need to talk about this. So I haven't gone public on social media. I've made some posts, obviously, on behalf of the channel. And like I was saying to you fine gentlemen before, I've got a show scheduled this evening with the Rock Professor and Brad. We're going to do our tribute show to Jeff Beck, but it would be remiss of us not to at least talk about Jeff Beck and his contribution to this idea and this whole guitar playing thing, this whole guitar god concept, because he's certainly one of the key figures. So on behalf of myself, if anyone from the Jeff Beck family or team is watching, everyone out there who's a Jeff Beck fan, rest in peace, Jeff Beck. Jimmy, you got anything you want to say before we pass it on to John?
I do. Let me ask you, was Jeff Beck a part of that Arms concert? You know what I'm talking about?
With Jimmy Page and Clapton, and when Page is smashed off his face. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, because I remember, what year was that? Like 81, 82?
Oh, I don't remember. No, a little bit later, a little bit about maybe 83.
Okay, all right, 83. I don't think it was past 84.
No.
Yeah. Around there, like 81, 83. Somebody could look it up.
Yeah.
Around that time is like when I started like really getting into guitar playing, and it was back then, like I'm trying to think. I think I was aware of Eddie around that time, but like back in the early 80s, there was nobody bigger in America than Zeppelin, really.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So, you love Jimmy Page, and then you kind of went back and you of course you knew about Eric Clapton, and then you knew about Jeff Beck. So those three were kind of like the Holy Trinity in a sense, right? Before Eddie, ascended fully, let's say. And like those were the three guys, at least for me. I mean, there was other guys that really influenced me. Like, I think, the reason I picked up guitar was because of Gary Richrath of REO Speedwagon. I just loved his playing with that Gibson and those Marshalls. But like those three guys, Page, Clapton, and Beck were like, the English guys that like guys like Gary Richrath worshipped, that learned from, so they were kind of like a step above or a step earlier than the guys that I really dug, right? But I remember that Arms concert and like having all three of them there. Page was kind of. I remember that time. Like I think there's a video of like maybe the New York show or something. I remember seeing it as a kid, And but like, you know, it was just this, you know, just great songs. You know, I mean, that is classic rock in a sense, right? That's what classic rock is. So like, you know, Jeff Beck's influence can't be minimized, or you know, it's just, you know, he's just a legend. So you know, and you know, from what I can remember, he lived a pretty clean life. I think, I
Yeah,
don't know.
he was a vegan or something. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't really get into like trouble like Page and Clapton kind of did. You know, he was, you know, it was just, you know, he was just really into like, and then like to some degree, I don't know if Andrew would agree with this, but to some degree, like Jeff Beck, he invented fusion, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like fusion guitar didn't exist before Jeff Beck. Am I right?
I'd say so. People were calling it jazz back in the late 60s. They didn't know what the term was. So there's interviews where people are calling him, you know, a jazz guitarist because they knew it wasn't rock and they knew he wasn't doing blues. So, yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, Jeff Beck, the guy, you know, he's a legend, and I guess he was a great hot rod builder too. So
Yeah, he's big.
very talented dude. You know, sad to see him go. John.
Definitely, yeah. I just think Jeff Beck was out of all of those guys. I just thought he was the greatest of them all. You know, somebody had said, you know, other guys were lucky; they had like bands or things like that. Like Page had Plant, you know, in the band, so it was like Zeppelin, you know, had their thing going on. Those guys were guitar heroes because of that, and he was kind of his own guy. But he was like a professor. He just like he never faded from relevance at all in my mind, Jeff Beck, because he could play anything, and up until even that Johnny Depp album, I listen to that album all the time. There's a couple amazing songs on there, and they're great. Even Johnny Depp is actually pretty good on it, and he never got pigeonholed into one style, or, you know, we all love Eddie, but Eddie did Eddie, you know, he was what he was best at. But this guy could just transform and play whoever he was playing with, and adapt to whatever was going on musically at the time. And he could just fit in and do all of that stuff. And, you know, and I'm not knocking anybody else, but I just thought that out of all those guys, out of Clapton, Page, all those guys, he could do anything. This guy, between the rockabilly stuff that he did, remember that Les Paul stuff he did, that thing at Iridium, the video a couple of years back. I mean, it was just all amazing stuff. His rockabilly stuff was just great. And I mean, I just can't say enough great things about him. I always thought he was just different than all the other guitar players, because he was a great guitar player. And it wasn't just one style. He could do many different things. And
You've hit the nail on the head. You've hit the nail on the head there, John.
I didn't know they were playing in my area here, but there's Jeff Beck and Johnny Depp's buses. I was working right there. So I was there for about, I hung around for about an hour, and this is October 7th, or like 3 months ago, whatever it was. But he must've been sleeping. So I didn't get to see him. I was hoping he'd pop his head out so I could run over and shake his hand. But
he's going to the bus driver. I'm not leaving this bus until that punk outside.
There's two things I'd like to share with you guys about Jeff Beck, and I'll probably talk about them a little bit later on too. And I'm glad that you mentioned it, John. You know, Jeff Beck played all the guitars. He played a Strat, he played a Gretsch, he played a Telecaster, and he played a Les Paul. He played all the great guitars right through his career. And I love that. I love the fact that he did that. I'm glad that you mentioned that his tribute to rock and roll, because I think that's an undermined DVD or video performance, and I think people are going to go back and negotiate that a little bit more, unfortunately, because of his passing, and I think that he's going to be seen again in a little bit more of a different light. But one other thing I'd like to share with you guys, though, and we love talking about this too, don't we? It's not just the fact that the guy was a great guitarist or he was a great musician. I love the fact that Jimmy, he was single-minded. If you watch the film that came out a couple of years ago, if he wasn't happy, Now, some people might say, well, that's pretty anal retentive of the guy or uncooperative. But if he wasn't happy doing something, if he wasn't happy in a band, he'd just walk away. And he did that a few times. He was happy to turn his back on a career-defining moment and go back, and he'd done it 3 or 4 times, and he'd just go and sleep on his mum's couch until the next opportunity. He was that confident, John, in his ability as a man, as a guitar player, that something else was going to come along. He was never going to sell out. No. That's worth something.
I might have my history a little confused. Was it Clapton or was it Beck that left the Yardbirds because like they suddenly became like commercial and he just
Clapton. Clapton did it. Clapton kind of started it. Kind of started the ball rolling with those English guys, but Beck did it too. Beck was quite comfortable, he doing, stuff that he wanted to do, that he felt comfortable, that he wanted to pursue. He wasn't going to be, John, put under pressure or the knuckles by the record companies or agents or managers. So we got to celebrate that, surely.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean, just look at his output too. It's just like you look at his whole discography from his whole career, and it's just like, it's just brilliant because it just spans every type of music from the 60s, 50s, 60s, all the way up till the current day. You know what I mean? He's that relevant for that many, genres of music throughout these last 50, 60 years, So I don't know. I mean, I was listening to Lead Boots over and over like a million times the last couple of days,
Mate, I think this comment here by Nelson's pretty good. It's a pretty good analogy. Jeff Beck was the Vi before Vi of his era. I think that sums it up pretty well. I've been listening to Commotion and Emotion over the last couple of days, the album that he did in 2010. He's got Joss Stone singing on there and some. Man, that's a great album, Jimmy.
Yeah.
No question. I mean, the playing is just, top notch. And like you were saying, he has, delved into a lot of different tones, could play anything. I loved, my favorite era, I guess, is like Blow by Blow, where I think that's when we used the Ox Blood Les Paul.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Am I right with that?
Yeah.
I'm no expert on Beck, unfortunately, but I love that. I love that look. And, I love that playing. I mean, and like I said, when I was a kid and growing up, I mean, those were the guys, those were like the masters that everybody seemed to be influenced by, Beck, Clapton, and Page, and some degree Hendrix too,
Yeah. And one other point too, guys, and Slash talks about it in his biography. He goes to great length and detail talking about how Jeff Beck was his man. When he was growing up, it was Beck. It was a little bit like EVH, would always take that opportunity when people used to try and make the analogy or try and say that Hendrix was his man, and he, remember that Smithsonian thing when that chick's interviewing him and he says, no. He gets quite a little bit angry and says, no, it was Clapton.
Yeah.
I've gotten into a few arguments on social media about people saying that, Eddie was influenced by Hendrix. And I'm like, no, not really.
Yeah.
No,
well, unfortunately, and I think it's a product of the fact that we're experienced people here, experienced men, and a lot of people in the chat too. But I think people just grab on the nearest hanging apple, don't they, John? And people will always probably assume, who aren't experts, okay, well, Jimi Hendrix seems to be number one on every guitar poll, so everybody must be must be influenced by Hendrix.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. There's a, it's funny because it's a Van Halen show. So obviously Eddie knew Beck, and I think they had a decent relationship because, Eddie would take swings at people, take little shots. He would get his shots in there at other guitar players. Like he loved Clapton, but when Clapton criticized Eddie would make sure to go back and say, yeah, I liked Clapton up until Cream. As soon as he started playing a Stratocaster, I had no, Derek and Dominoes. I had no use for any of that after that. So it was kind of like a little shot back at Clapton for saying that Eddie couldn't play the blues or whatever like that. But I think Eddie had a lot of respect for Jeff Beck. I think as a person, because I think Eddie liked cars and Jeff Beck liked cars, so they had a little in common there. And Beck, I remember reading years ago, we had a few nice things to say about Eddie's too. So, and there's a clip going around of, I was just mentioning lead boots, but there's a clip of Eddie during a sound check playing a Telecaster with lead boots. I don't know if you guys have seen any of it, but.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Eddie's playing the Telecaster too.
Yeah.
So I think Eddie was a big fan of, like, you know, Blow by Blow and Wired, that type of Beck, that era, because that would have been the time when he was kind of, you know, growing up, and his influence. John says it down there. Ed may have consciously chosen Eric as an influence, but it's unfair to say other people to notice other influences he may have unconsciously displayed in his playing. And I definitely hear a little Beck, just some of that, you know, even in that particular song, Lead Boots, there's a little, for the time when it was released, it's like, man, it's like, well, Eddie kind of had a little bit of that vibe going on in some of his riffs, you know, a couple of years later. So. Anyway.
And didn't Eddie talk about Guitar Shop as well? Beck's Guitar Shop, he mentioned that too. I remember reading, you know, when that album came out, he was listening to that too. So
that's a great album.
Yeah.
Terry Bozzio on that album. That's just a great album. Yeah. I love that album.
Yeah. Hey, guys, can I just do a quick shout out to a couple of people that have just jumped in since we've been live? We've got Han 36 Solo in here, Bent Tom in here, Jimmy Ray Hawkins, Holly Lewis is here. Good to see you guys. And if I've missed anyone else, Guitar Meets Science was here for a little bit. Thank you for hanging out with us, guys. If you're watching a replay of this show and you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do. All subs to our channel gets an immediate sub back. So if you want to help grow your own channel, I promise I'll sub back to you.
Yeah, every note that Jeff Beck played was like, I mean, it was different attack, different every note was like meaningful. You know what I mean? It wasn't just like, if you listen to him. And I know somebody said something similar to that in the chat too. But he was just different. He really was one of the top great rock guitar player, more than rock, just guitar players of the last 50 years. I always thought Beck was, you know, I love Clapton, I love Page, I love all those, but I always put Beck a little level higher than all of them as far as ability and playing, you know?
Definitely ability, yeah. Yeah.
I just think he could do it all, that guy, you know. And like I said,
you made a good point, Johnny, that like there wasn't a band behind. There wasn't an established.
He didn't have like a Robert Plant or like Pete Townsend or Daltrey or, you know, or the big song, you know what I mean, like the Stairway to Heaven or anything like that. He didn't have anything like that, but I don't think he cared, and I don't think that's what he wanted. And he did what he wanted to do, and you know, like I said, it just, his discography. If you start to go listen to it, it just, whatever he was interested in, it's just like, that's what he would do. And like, that's why he loved rockabilly. He loved that old stuff, you know, 50s kind of stuff. And then, and he did some of that. And then all the way up to the end, even that, like I said, if you haven't given that, I always was kind of frowned upon the Johnny Depp thing at first, like rolled my eyes, like, oh no, but I should have trusted Beck because it's actually a pretty good album. There's some good stuff on there, and his playing, as soon as he starts playing, it's great.
But isn't that though typical from what I understand of what Beck was as a man? I've watched a few interviews over the last couple of days, guys. You know, and Johnny Depp goes to great lengths on a few videos, interviews to talk about how he's in a better place now because of the fact that Jeff Beck and his wife took him in when everyone else didn't want to touch the guy.
Yeah, he was when he died.
Yeah. When he was public enemy number one, he was being crucified in the media for we won't turn this into a political show, but you know what I mean. And
he was canceled. He was canceled.
That's right. That's the word. Yeah. And you know, Beck took him in and gave him a home, and you know, I just think that's remarkable. That's a lovely story. But isn't that also, you guys said before about how, he didn't need a backup band, Jimmy. He isn't that the true bluesman's mentality? I can just walk into any bar, any honky tonk with any backup line and play what I want.
Yeah.
What a great concept,
Could you do it? Could you do it, bro?
I can't. That's like a real journeyman right there.
Look at all the great songs that he made greater because he was on them. Mikey Mojo points it out in there. It was one of Mikey's the Honey Drippers, Rockin' at Midnight. That's him on that one. That's just, it's brilliant, right there.
Yeah.
People, Rod Stewart, People Get Ready. That's a classic, that version of it. Then you hear Infatuation. I think he was on that one by Rod Stewart too. Infatuation.
Yeah, he was.
He was playing Jackson in that one, right?
I forgot. I was going to bring up the Jackson. Yeah.
And then, if you've ever heard him do A Day in the Life by the Beatles, and then also Danny Boy, it's just, you got to go on YouTube and watch those. They're just amazing versions of Danny Boy is just amazing the way he plays it. So check those two out for sure. The Beatles, A Day in the Life, and Danny Boy, the classics. He kills it on those. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I suppose, from a personal point of view, guys, before we move on, from my perspective, Jeff Beck was always there too. When you're a young guy growing up and you discover Led Zeppelin, you discover Jimmy Page and Clapton, the compass was always going to point to Beck, and Beck was always in my orbit. I was listening to him. You knew that he was part of the Yardbirds when I was 14, 15, when I was discovering these guys. So he was always there from the start. But I've got to tell you, though, he became a key figure in my musical journey when he started doing, and I'll talk about this later, when he started doing the Crossroads gigs with Eric Clapton, the first and the second. So he would often be a feature on those Crossroads concerts that he would do, and it always blew me away because his guitar playing was so much in contrast, Jimmy, to everybody else's, because he's playing hammerhead, off Commotion and Emotion, using a vibrato and a wah-wah, which is completely different to John Mayer, who was on, and ZZ Top, who's coming on after him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the original use of the whammy bar, and I forget what happened. I forget what was so... There was something about that Jeff Beck Strat too. I forget. It had some, I was talking to my buddy Les Paul Gibson about this. Now, everybody gets a signature model. There's a and the only difference between, a signature model and the real and the regular guitar is that it it's just a different color, like a special paint job. Okay. Whereas I remember Beck had, he had a custom, Strat, but it was custom, like a signature guitar in the sense that it had stuff that you couldn't get on a regular Stratocaster, maybe a boost or something. I forget the specifics, but I remember thinking that this is an original idea for a Strat.
Yeah, I remember, I think playing the first one that they put out. It was, I remember a seafoam green or something like that Strat, but I remember the neck on it too. It was just it was like a baseball bat. And I wasn't when I picked up the Strat, I was expecting more of a C shape, but it was a big hunk of wood, this neck on it. It was the Jeff Beck signature. I was like, wow, I couldn't play that one. You know what I mean? But the other thing about him is he wasn't an equipment snob at all. He could take a little practice amp and any guitar and give him 10 minutes and he'd do what he had to do to the guitar to make it playable. And that guy could make anything sound amazing. I think Rick Beato said that he was at a sound check of his and there was a practice amp or something like that. And he had it up there and he was going to use that for the gig even. He was but he says, I don't know how to turn the delay off on it. He goes, otherwise I would just use this. It sounds great. And Beato said he knew how to turn the delay off, but he just shut his mouth and just sat there. He didn't want to, get into it, but he's and he did. He goes, he made this tiny little practice amp sound amazing. Whatever, he wasn't a snob like that about, I guess, equipment either, like a lot of guys are. He didn't have to have, his exact setup all the time. He could make whatever he had work, So
what's interesting about Jeff Beck and the signature strats is he would have been the first guy to get the signature strat ahead of Eric Clapton. It was based on the Strat Plus, which had the roller nut, the metal nut on there as well. And if you have a look at some of the early Strat Pluses, it had 2 single coil pickups by the bridge originally. That was the original Stratocaster, signature Stratocaster that they were going to do. If you go and have a look at the late 80s or early 90s of Jeff Beck playing. And then later on, obviously, when Fender came to him and said, look, we're going to put your name on one, they just had the standard Stratocaster pickup configuration, still with the roller nut. And I don't think he had a treble boost on it like Clapton's one, but it has the TBX. Sorry, yeah, it has that TBX, which is not, it's not an active effect on it as well. So
yeah, I remember there being something special, and that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like if you have a signature guitar, have it be something different instead of just like a different color, like a special color. It's stupid.
Yeah. We've got some cool cats. We've got Fruitcake Tony jumping in the chat, and also Robert Ranford. Thank you guys. And I've got to agree with Mikey's comment there. Ronnie Scott's is a must watch. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Should we get on and start talking about 84, guys?
Of course.
Before we do that, though, while we've got some cats in the chat here hanging out with us, before we went live, ladies and gentlemen, we discussed the prospect of Jimmy and John, because these guys are gear nuts, doing a show sooner rather than later, where they go through talking about their effects, how they get their EVH tones. Recently, John put up a couple of pics, and he's got a great rig. And we'll obviously be interested in what Jimmy's got to offer as far as tone talk goes, because he plays in a tribute Van Halen band. So if you guys are interested in us doing a show like that in the next couple of weeks, certainly the next six or 4 weeks, let us know.
I'm in. I know John's in too. So that's 2 people.
I'm in.
Oh, 3.
So what were you going to say, bro, before Jimmy? And you said we'd wait for Hos, but you had some notes here that you wanted to share with us, if that's okay.
Yeah. First, let me show you. This is how much I love 84. I had some special picks done for this year. It's my band's 10-year anniversary. So I don't know if you can see this. Hold on, where is it? So the one side is like that famous picture of Eddie from like the 84 back cover or whatever, right? And then I got the baby on the other side. And it's these are the pics that I actually use. But I use these as like a promotional thing. If I see somebody having a good time, I go up to them during the break and say, "Hey man, thanks for being here. You play guitar, here's some pics or whatever." I've got some stickers that I give people. But 84 is just, I think it is a masterpiece. I mean, I think Fair Warning is my favorite album. I can't not say that. Fair Warning is just Fair Warning. That's like the benchmark. But 84. I mean, I'd put 84 up there with like Van Halen 1. I mean, 84 has there's stuff on there that. I was thinking about this earlier. I think there's stuff on there. You told us that at some point we're going to talk about our 3 favorite tracks off 84. So I've got that all straightened out. But there's some rock. There's some incredibly rock stuff on there. There's like some masterpiece stuff on there. But then there's like some stuff that I felt like, again, going back to that time when I was talking about where there wasn't an internet and all you had was your own goddamn opinion. Right.
Good point.
Influenced you. Was that like, stuff like Top Jimmy? How incredible is Top Jimmy? But I feel like if Top Jimmy was on, I was thinking about this. I mean, this is my own opinion, but I feel like if Top Jimmy was on A Different Kind of Truth, people would be like, it's all right, whatever, throwaway track. but like Top Jimmy is a great tune, great. I mean, just the fact that the like the rest of the song, beside the solo is in one tuning, and the rest of the song is in a completely different tuning. So you technically play it right. To play it live, you technically need 2 guitars, if you're going to do that. So there's Top Jimmy. There's like, I'll Wait. I people have a problem with I'll Wait, like being too poppy. I mean, what an incredible solo,
Yep.
In the middle of that, and I'll tell you what, man, I just think, this is a little bit superficial. We'll get into like I'm kind of stalling a little bit, waiting for Hos to get into the real nitty gritty, but we'll just like I remember seeing, I forget where I first saw the album cover. And it's just so goddamn iconic. That blue is that like baby blue, background with like, the cherub or whatever, it's just so iconic that like it's got to be my favorite album cover, at least out of Van Halen, if not ever. It's just so cool. And I remember walking past the record stores at the mall. Around that time, my family had a well, it wasn't so much around that time. It was a couple years later, but my family had a store at the mall that down the street here in Trumbull. But just walking around there and like walking past like the big record store there, Graf Wadman, and out in front is just like bins, 10 different, 84s just to catch your eye as you're walking by. 10 different 1984, records, LPs, and you're just like, and back then I had no money. I didn't have any.
Just hold that thought, bro. Hold that thought, bro. Hold that no money thought.
Yay! How's it going, guys? Oh, stop it.
Good to see you.
Stop it, Andrew. Yes, it's great to see you guys too. Happy New Year.
You got shitloads of cheering last night, bro, didn't you?
Yeah, it was it was a good gig last night, and John was there, John ZD351, which was a beautiful surprise to see him and catch up and have a hug and say hi. So I can see John's in the chat there, so good to see you, brother, last night. But yeah, it was a really good show. Thanks. Sorry, I've just been getting ready to. We've got an early show today. It's like a Sunday session, so I'm not going to have as much time to hang out as I would have loved to. But yeah, I'll have to head off to that in about 40 minutes or something like that.
Mate, we'll take you any way we can get you, brother. Trust me. So I know that you haven't met Jimmy before. I know that you've met John. So you guys might want to just have a bit of a chat. I'll promise I'll be quiet for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, beautiful. How you doing, Jim? It's good to see you, brother.
I mean, we kind of met during
that
whole Christmas thing, but big admirer of Hos, man. I think I've told him this before. I think Hos is the greatest Van Halen guy out there.
Ah, man, thank you so much. That's very, very sweet. There's so many great Van Halen players out there, and everyone adds their own personal touch to it, which I think is what we all enjoy about it. It's beautiful,
But when there's somebody that can just, when there's somebody that can get the feel and just like, I don't know, just like the swing that you have on some of that stuff. It's, I heard this track. I think you were doing, I think it was that Van Halen thing you guys did like last year at the hotel, Summer Nights. And it's just like Summer Nights just sounded like it was Eddie. It was so great. The tone, the Steinberger or whatever, it was awesome. It was fantastic. Yeah,
it was really fun actually. Getting a loan from a good friend of mine of the Steinberger and doing it properly. I'd never played one before actually, so it was really cool fun, like getting used to. I mean, Summer Nights is one of the songs where he really used the locking it into different keys and different positions, like a lot in the one song. He's constantly changing the pitch of the whole guitar and between one section of the song and another. So that took some getting used to, and I first started fooling around with that. But yeah, that was heaps of fun. And Summer Nights, I'm sure, like for all of us, was always, one of my favorite songs because I grew up with the Live Without a Net video. So, it was to be able to play that live after all these years was there it is. Yeah. Yeah, of course, we all had it back in the VHS days, didn't we, on videotape? And I think my copy got so worn out that it was almost unplayable. It, had lines through it and everything. But yeah, I don't know. Do you guys know if they've remastered that? They haven't, have they? It's on DVD, but it's still the same quality as it was, right?
Yeah.
There's one version on YouTube that is really good. Oh, it's really good. It's almost like 4K-ish. It's It's from somebody cleaned it up, and
you type in Live Without a 4K or something like that. It's like 60 frames per second or something. I think
it's really good. Like I can imagine having it look any better from just a regular, source. But yeah, I've talked to Andrew about this before, where like it's fascinating how you guys only had like that. You didn't have the ability to see those guys live. All you had on the net. That's kind of special in a way. That's all you had.
Yeah, it's really, really true, and that's why like those things were precious to us, and we just wore them out, and then for the rest of it, you just have to use your imagination. And the amount of times that I would be falling asleep or something, and just with my eyes closed, just imagining what it would be like to actually be at a live Van Halen concert back in the day. So which is fine, because it's awesome when you can do it in your imagination like that as well. So but yeah, that was those materials were all we had, so we used them and abused them.
I remember a couple years ago, probably like 10, 15 years ago, I was big into trading videotapes, like concert tapes. This was before Facebook or any of that. You kind of had like a message board, and people would post their lists of the videos they had. And if you could work out some kind of trade, maybe you had a video of Jeff Beck, let's say, and they had a video of Van Halen in '82 at Largo. So you would make a copy of the Jeff Beck one, send it to them, and they would send you the Largo one. So I kind of like got a lot of those shows that are out there right now. Everything's on YouTube, but I got a lot of that stuff from like there's a lot of footage from '82, like Montevideo and Brazil, and there's like the Largo show, and I remember just popping it in, and like that was the first time I actually saw a real full Van Halen show in the Dave era. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
This is what that was like, and the different set lists, because I'd seen him with I'd never seen him with Dave up until 2007, because my very first show was '86. It was 5150 at the Meadowlands. I think Conks was there one night with me or something. And
they're all 4 nights there, right?
I was there the last night, the very last.
How many nights did they do?
4 nights.
4 there.
4 nights. Wow, that's so cool. Yeah.
And I had the worst seats. I don't think there was anybody behind me, right? And the thing where you're like, that it's like suddenly there's the guy. He's not on the TV anymore. He's like right in front of you, Eddie. And that's just like the biggest thrill. And back then, like I talked to my friends about this. Back then, I didn't even know how I got there. Like this is '86. Like I had just gotten my driver's license, and like there wasn't any MapQuest. I'm like, how do I even get to the Meadowlands? I had to break. I think I had to break out a map with my old man and like map our way. Like, okay, hit 95, then take this road, then take this exit. And if you got lost, man, you're screwed. But you made it out there, and it was what a night.
Yeah, it would have been. So tell me, was like obviously that's around the time of Live Without a Net. Was that before or after they filmed that?
That was actually about maybe 2 weeks before Live Without a Net. Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That Live Without a Net was filmed like 13 miles from here in New Haven.
New Haven, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Go to New Haven.
Halen.
I think I told this story. I didn't go to New Haven because there was talk that they were going to cancel the show because Judas Priest was there a couple of weeks
Right.
before, and they kind of like tore out these seats. So I'm like, forget it. I'm not missing this. So me and my buddy went to the Meadowlands. August 1st was my night. August 1st, '86, and I think when was Live Without a Net? Like
Yeah, you're right.
20,
It was 2 weeks later, like the 24th.
Yeah. I mean, you can't. But the wonder about Live Without a Net is that there's like 3 or 4 different videos from that era. Just like a fan shot. There's Kansas City. There some other ones. There's Montreal. And the thing is, like Eddie's licks in New Haven, especially on One Way to Rock. Every night he did different licks. Right. Not like a set thing. Completely different licks.
Yeah.
But there's something about Live Without a Net where those licks are just so great.
I totally agree. Aren't those licks in One Way to Rock just etched into our musical subconscious, and his phrasing and, man, all those licks in that song. That's actually one of the first things that I did was learn all the little bits in between the vocals, because each one was different to each other, and they all had their own flavor and character. Really, really cool phrasing and like blues, really. But the blues the way Eddie plays the blues. Yeah. Awesome.
I think that I just think it was a good time for them. I mean, especially when that was recorded in the tour. They started the tour March 27th, I think it was, in Louisiana, Shreveport, and then that was August. So you're talking about 6 months probably of, they were pretty tight at that point, pretty comfortable with each other. And I don't think that the newness had worn off yet with Sammy. So you could just kind of, I know at the shows when we were there, you could just feel it. It was like this energy. And when you think about it, it was like, man, they basically turned their back on all of their first 6 albums, and they just played like, Panama, Ain't Talking About Love. And a lot of times they didn't even play Jump. And then a couple of Hagar songs, you know what I mean? And then, it's the whole 5150 album. And but normally you'd be disappointed if you went to see a band and they didn't play all their old hits, especially a band like Van Halen. They didn't play Running with the Devil. They didn't play this. They played You Really Got Me. I remember they opened with that. That was the real opening song right on that tour. And,
was it? Right. That's interesting. Yeah.
That was the opener. Yeah. And then I think
sorry, John, because obviously the song order on Live Without a Net is not the song order that they would have done the shows. And obviously the Live Without a Net video is reasonably short. They would have obviously done more songs that ended up in the video. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I don't think it was that crazily different though, to be honest with you. I don't think
it wasn't. I mean, besides like good, they didn't do good. There's no Good Enough. There's no You Really Got Me.
And did they play Good Enough live at that time?
Isn't it Good Enough that they did? Yeah, he did Good Enough live with the 84 guitar. Yeah.
And Dreams they played live, but Dreams just it didn't sound great. Dreams, I'll be honest with you, live in the arena.
Yeah,
because he was just playing like the keyboard, and there was no guitar until the solo, and then there was no keyboard backing the solo, so it was just Mike playing behind it. So it sounded kind of empty. And obviously, later on they went to like the sequencer or whatever they had playing, the keyboard parts. But it was noticeably, I remember, it just didn't have a lot of life to it. It just sounded kind of missing something. Dreams.
Yeah, right, gotcha.
Otherwise, I think it would have been on the video there too, because obviously it was one of the big hits. But I just remember just that energy. It was just, and it, like I said, you expected them to play a lot of these old songs. You didn't, but when the show was over, it was one of those things you didn't even realize it or miss it. It was just like, oh my gosh, that was such a great show. You know what I mean? So in that way, I think it was really, really good, because I think they were still a new band and it hadn't worn off yet, and you could feel it. You know what I mean? So I think it was special, that tour, and especially that video. You know what I mean? I'm thankful that we have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Did I read somewhere? I seem to have a vague recollection that Good Enough didn't make it on the video because they weren't really happy with how they used to play it live or something. Is that wrong?
No, I think you're right. And I kind of remember Good Enough not being, in a way, for some reason, like Dreams. It just didn't
quite click, for some reason.
Yeah, exactly. You know how you can tell sometimes when a song just doesn't have it live when they play it. And I kind of remember that being the case with Good Enough also. But but even like Eddie's solo, they chopped that up because, which stinks. I wish they kind of would restore it, because You know, he started out with that thing. I mentioned it once before. It was like, you know, he's playing like an A minor, a G, and an F. It was like this little melody.
Oh yeah.
And then so we do that, and that was real memorable. I remembered that when I got home. I remember, and then he went into Fury Release after that, and then he went into 316. I think it was after that. He did like the whole Fury Release thing, sitting down. And that was really cool. And then he went into 316. And then Alex kicked in, and I'm pretty sure even Mike was on the bass, because 316 wasn't called 316 at the time. It was just a blues jam. And and Mike, I think, was in the bass, and they just jammed a little bit on that for a minute or two. And it was a cool little blues jam. And then he went into like, you know, the rest of all his bits from, you know, that. But I wish they would restore that, because the solo is really, the way it originally was really cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that we wish that the Van Halens would do.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. I actually I played a bit of 316 last night at the gig. There's a moment where I play for a couple of minutes just on my own in my sort of, you know, section of the show, and I hadn't planned to do that at all. I normally play this little solo Mike Landau piece, which is really pretty, you know, like just a clean chorusy sort of thing. And for some reason, 316 just popped into my head, and I started playing that, which was great, because I never played that live. So
that's cool.
It's obviously a simple little thing, but it's, again, because, you know, the Live Without a Net thing is just so etched into our musical subconscious. It's just, I can only really ever hear it. You know, I obviously know that he went on and did it, you know, developed it into more than what it was when he used to just play it as a piece in his solo. But, you know, the way that he plays it on Live Without a Net, that's just always the way that I hear it. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny, you can see where they cut it on Live Without a Net, because where he does a little harmonic part.
Yeah.
But if that little jam in it was actually really cool. I mean, if anybody hasn't heard that, it's got to be on the Kansas City, the boot for that, or Montreal. But it was a cool little like kind of jam that they did in there. So if you haven't heard it, check it out. It's pretty cool.
Okay, I will definitely.
If I
for
can
sure.
find it, I'll send it to you. Yeah, it's
Okay.
worth it. It's definitely worth it. But that was just great. It was a new band, you know, coming off of you know, we were talking about 1984. I mean, we could swing back to that. I just feel like 1984 was like the perfect ending in a way. I'm of the thinking that it was like Van Halen was like a comet, and they were just too combustible, and they had to ultimately explode. I just don't think that, you know. So in a way, now looking back, at the time I was angry that, you know, Dave left or whatever like that. But now I look at it a little differently. I feel like they had to implode. You know what I mean? It was just like they burned so bright that they had to implode. And I feel like 1984 was the pinnacle of those albums. To me, it's my favorite of the first 6 albums. I love Van Halen, the first one, and I love Fair Warning. Those are close, but I love 1984 because I really think it was the pinnacle of everything, where they came into like the public conscious. Everybody, grandma knew Jump. You know, it was like they were, you know, every band, like big band, like U2, everybody has that moment where they're in the zone and they can do nothing wrong. And it's just like, you know, this special light from above is shining on them. And it continued for Van Halen. They still had that glow, and 5150 was still there, that aura around them, you know, is still carried over. But they were, on 1984, it was just like they could not do anything wrong. And I just think that the album is just brilliant. I just think it's a perfect, from start to finish. It has a little bit of everything. It has some quirky stuff like Top Jimmy. It has the jams like Girl Gone Bad and House of Pain for the hardcore fans. It has the pop stuff like Jump, and then just like the classic Hot for Teacher, the Boogie, Panama. It's just got, you know, it's got everything that you could want. And that, to me, it's like the perfect Van Halen album. You know what I mean? So to me, it's my favorite. And because of, and I even like even the sound of it, for a little studio, you know, 16 track studio, I love the way the Simmons drums sound. He didn't overdo it. 5150, he had the toms on it. They sound very dated. And that, but you know, with the Rototoms, the only electronic drums he used on 1984 were the 2 Simmons kick drums and the floor toms. I think he had 2 floor toms, and the rest were roto toms, where you turn them like this, boom, 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 and you tighten them.
Yeah.
I had a picture years ago of that setup from that album. In 5150, it was pretty much the same. It was only the one room. It was that tiny room, and but he added the toms on there too. But I thought the drums sounded phenomenal on everything breathed. Everything sounded open on that album. I just think it was a great sounding, album. And I thought the drum sound was very acceptable to me. I hate the drum sound on pretty much a lot of the first 6 albums. I don't feel like Alex's snare, his voice on his snare really showed up until parts of Fair Warning, and then Diver Down. You could start to hear that Alex signature sound. But the first album, the second album, Women and Children First, I don't think Alex's drums are good sounding by any means. I think it's hard. I hate the drum sound on those albums, but
okay,
brilliant albums. But if I'm going to pick it apart, I much prefer, it looks like Falling Off of Carnal Knowledge. I love the drum sound on that when they added the room. But 1984, for being in that small room, limited, I thought they got a really great drum sound. I just thought that everything worked on that album. I think everything just came together, and it's just like some things you can't recreate. It's just like magic, and I think that whole album is magic.
Yeah. Killer album. I always loved Drop Dead Legs as well. That was whenever Van Halen would do like a slow kind of sleazy groove like that, like that's where, they're obviously they're untouchable when it comes to their shuffles. But I think the other thing that they do really better than a lot of other rock bands, especially in the 80s, is that really back slow kind of, like I said, I don't know, I think of it as like their version of like a sleazy kind of groove,
I think it was I think he said that was Back in Black kind of inspired that, right? That particular song, It was
I think
because he loved that. I remember at one festival, Eddie said he was in the trailer, and he said that AC/DC was on the stage, and he could hear I forget what it was, like a 4 on the floor beat. I don't know. I was trying to figure out what song it might have been at that time. What festivals, I'm thinking about what festival, what 4 on the floor, it was like I don't know if it was like Shoot to Thrill. I think that has that 4 on the floor beat on it like that.
Yeah.
Inspired Panama, because if you look at Panama, the kick drum is on every beat, and that's a lot of guys play it wrong. They go boom, but it's it's 4 on the floor, the whole thing. And he said that was AC/DC inspired Panama too. And I'm always trying to figure out what song it was, because what's a 4 on the floor song? Shoot to Thrill is definitely one. There's a few other ones too, but I don't.
Yeah.
But he definitely, it's funny how inspired he was by AC/DC, believe it or not, and it doesn't sound anything like it. Panama or Drop Dead Legs don't sound anything like AC/DC, but, in strange places where inspiration comes from, I guess, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. AC/DC obviously influenced if you took AC/DC out of existence, I think, rock bands in the 80s would have sounded quite different, because a lot of rock bands, were influenced by AC/DC, and all of us really. I grew up playing all the early AC/DC records like all the time, and even though I never really sat down and kind of worked out all of Angus Young's licks, but I find myself now, if I'm doing a solo where I'm improvising on stage, every now and again a lick will come out, and I'll kind of go, oh, isn't that interesting? That's like an Angus Young lick off whatever song, even though I'd never really sat and worked it out, but it's just in there,
It's seeped in, right?
It seeped way in, yeah, absolutely. And but of course, so it doesn't surprise me that much that they would have been influenced by AC/DC. I think, someone will correct me if I'm wrong, AC/DC's very first album, I think, was like 1972. I think it was 72 or 3, as far back as that. And but someone in the chat will correct me if that's not right, but definitely early 70s. So, they were around doing their thing long before Van Halen released their first record. So, it does follow that they would have been listening to that stuff for sure. And of course, even if they were playing, even when they play covers live, Van Halen, they'd still sound like Van Halen.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
We also can't mention Drop Dead Legs without going over that last outro solo thing, man. What a solo. And we'll get to the solo in a little bit, but just that riff that starts right after that little pause there. You know, I'm like they just piece it together. I don't know if it was written like that or if they just pieced it.
It wasn't. That was all Don Landy, and it wasn't Ed and Alex had nothing to do with that. That was all the song. They didn't know where to go with it. So when the night is through, that part, they didn't know where to go after that. So they stopped, I guess, the tape. That was just
Then Alex kind of like trying to,
and Don another time they were jamming it, and Don found that when Ed was doing that, they were just jamming, and he actually cut the tape and spliced that on there perfectly, and it works. It sounds like they're playing it all in one shot, but he said it was never written like that. I didn't hear it until Don. It's in the 30th anniversary article. He said I didn't even hear it until Don played it for me. He goes, we never played it that way. He goes, he just spliced the tape together and it fit perfect, So
right.
That's his
solo though,
whole Holdsworth era there. He was those that legato Holdsworth stuff on there, right?
Absolutely.
Amazing. I can listen to that. I wish that went on for like another 5 minutes.
I agree.
Just great licks. Just in the context of that song, that's the thing with Eddie that people don't really talk about is that he could burn, but he it's not like every solo is him burning, right? Okay, you got Running with the Devil, that little solo thing. You got what's another example? Some songs don't even have a solo. Dance the Night Away doesn't really have a solo except for that little breakdown thing. So the guy that's the beauty of Ed is that he just there's another example I can't think about right now, but it wasn't like, okay, here's Running with the Devil, right? Well, although he could have done that, he follows that.
I was just going to say, Jim. I think a lot of other guitarists probably would have done that.
Absolutely. That's kind of like what I'm kind of saying, like without inferring it.
That's right. Yeah.
And like most people just burn. Like if you could burn, you'd burn. Whereas he just kind of laid back. So when like you got something like that outro, I mean, just amazing. And another song that we have to mention is House of Pain. Come on.
Yeah.
So much better than the original version. That's so much better.
Like it's sort of like Drop Dead Legs. It goes into that other part where it's like like that. It's almost like a second song that's kind of put together, And I just love that. I was playing 84 for my old man, like around 85 or so. We were painting the house, I remember, and I was way into Van Halen, and my dad, he played guitar too, acoustic, like nothing, shreddalistic or anything, but he was digging that part, he's digging like the groove that Eddie was laying down on that. It's just, I love 84. There's so many great moments on it. Even like, you put I bought the album and you put the needle down and like you hear 1984. You're like, oh wow, man. Again, this is like before like the internet ruined shit for you, right? Where like you could just make your own opinion. Oh, I had no problem with Ed playing keyboards, and then that kind of like flows into it pauses, and then you hear jump, and you're like, whoa. Before jump, they used to do that all the time, in the other albums.
1984, that instrumental piece was like another one that was like an hour long, and Don Landy, there's edits all over that. Don Landy cut it down to that minute or whatever, minute and 15 seconds, whatever it is. So the original version of that was just Eddie just sitting there playing for like,
oh yeah, I bet.
30 minutes. And Don, like, I guess, liked certain parts of it and just chopped the tape up with a razor blade and taped it back together. And that's what you hear on there is that just edit from like a half hour's worth of music, just edited down to like a minute and 15 minute, 30 second, whatever. If it's even
now, what do you guys think about, that news that came out with Templeman's book? Now we all know that there's the Lamborghini on Panama, right? But he's saying that the Lamborghini was kind of. Let me tell you something, right? He's saying that the Lamborghini is kind of mixed in there in the beginning of Hot for Teacher. Now here's the thing. I didn't believe it until somebody played me a clip of a Lamborghini just like idling, and it sounds a lot like it. Like it could have been kind of like mixed in there a little bit.
I don't see it because
I don't believe it, but it sounds a lot like it.
I would have thought that Ed and Alex would have said something about, like that though. You know what I mean? At some point, it's like, yeah, how cool is that? Looking like that's my car, but they never ever said it. So I don't know.
Well, and then there's the thing, like maybe Templeman's confused and he's really talking about Panama, but the guy did play a clip of that. What's that? The Lamborghini. What's it called? The Mira or something?
Mira, yeah.
And when it's just like sitting there, it kind of, I didn't believe it. Like, I'm like, no car sounds like that, like a drums thing, but it really did.
I'll be honest with you though, but if you're like a Lamborghini Miura like that, it doesn't sound. That sounds more like a motorcycle at the beginning of that. If you listen to Lamborghini Miura, it's like smooth. It doesn't sound like that has that. Listen to Panama when he revs it. It doesn't have that. I mean, even when it's idling, like when he hits it, it's not like a blah, 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 I don't know. Our sound effects here, but I just the whole story about that album about them sneaking out the back gate with the tapes, Don, when Ted would show up because they but Ted, to his credit, he always said, and this is always, I always find this stuff interesting, is that Ed, he said he was a brilliant musician. When he first saw him, he was just blown away, but he knew that he had a pop sensibility to him and that he could write pop songs with a pop hooks and sensibility. And so he knew that combination, it was just like, man, this is just a winning this guy's like a virtuoso who's able to bring that other element into it, which is, important. And it's true because Van Halen did have a poppiness. Obviously, even in the Hagar years, there's a lot of very poppy stuff like that. And a lot of guys say, oh, they hate that and stuff like that. But Eddie always said pop means popular, means people like you. And I kind of agree with that. I like a lot of pop music. You know what I mean? When the Backstreet Boys are on the radio, that I Want It That Way, I don't turn it off. I sing along with it, you know what I mean? I'm not a music snob. Like Dave Grohl always says, I'm not a music snob. That's, why he plays with Rick Springfield or whatever. But, and I think Eddie got that. And I think that's a part of their appeal. But most bands, they start out like pure rock intentions, but they all seem to go through that. They want that pop, you know what I mean? Look at even Metallica, you know what I mean? As heavy as they were, that Black album considered pop, you know what I mean? Every major rock band seems to go, even Zeppelin, Into the Outdoor is a little more poppy,
John, being pop pays the bills, and there's nothing wrong with that.
That's exactly right.
I agree, and I don't have. I love it. I don't care, but it seems like every band though, if you think about it, like I said, even Zeppelin with All My Love, the keyboard part, it was like that was more poppy kind of Zeppelin-y stuff. So I don't have a problem with it, but but Van Halen was definitely had a major pop sensibility to them. The hooks, I think that's one of the reasons that they're be so memorable.
Wasn't that though? Just the center point in history, though, guys. You had the V and Hos of MTV coming in the States and dominating things, and what we have to remember while we're talking about something being pop, ladies and gentlemen, for you younger ones watching now, and the younger ones maybe watching us on replay, pop music back in the 80s was a different animal, Hos, wasn't it, John and Jimmy, than what it is today. So when we say pop music, we probably mean it a little bit more sympathetically and respectfully as far as our memories of it compared to what pop music is today.
Yes. Pop music back then was like, I mean, the thing was like after Beat It with like Eddie on it, every pop song had a guitar solo, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, like, what's that song from Flashdance? Maniac.
Maniac, yeah.
Seriously, Lionel Richie, guitar solo, you name it.
Yeah.
No, guitar solo on like, what was that song?
The Lionel Richie song?
No, there's a Madonna song. Anyway, but like every single song, every single pop song had a guitar solo. So you're like, yeah, man, that's cool. And like, to me, like pop in the 80s was like, like that band Cutting Crew, like I Died in Your Arms Tonight. That to me is
song.
80s, which is a fantastic song. Pop
Yeah.
today is like, I don't know, Kanye or something. I can't.
Yeah.
Pop music in the 80s had
100% right. Like completely different, you know, pop versus pop in the 80s versus pop today.
Yeah.
You know?
Pop in the 80s
Well,
had guitars in it. Pop today doesn't, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
One other thing that I want to bring up about 84 is that people sometimes ask me, like, what's the hardest Van Halen song to play? Right.
Oh, good question.
And, you know, for my go-to answer is Girl Gone Bad, because
that's tricky.
you have to hit you're out there, you have to hit those harmonics, boop, 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 right?
Yeah.
And then you go into that, you know, and you got to lock in with the drums. Then once you're done with that, you go into the verse stuff, okay? Once you're done with that, you go into the pre-chorus, right? And then the solo, and then you got to go back into the tapping without missing a beat, and then end the goddamn song with these licks in between, you know? So it's you know, like, and the thing is, you know, you can play that like in your basement, like, you know, you got a couple of cracks at it, but you got to play that thing live, man. You get one shot and one shot only. So, you know, there's harder riffs. Like I think like the Hang 'em High.
Yeah, that's tricky for sure. That one
tricky, but like the whole. But once you get past that riff, the rest of the song is doable. But I feel like Girl Gone Bad, just because it's just nonstop. You just have to nonstop be on. You know, you're always on and like on top of your game to get through that song.
If you had to pick 3 Van Halen songs to somebody who never heard them before and that doesn't know anything about them, personally, I would pick Girl Gone Bad as the one. That would be the band kind of song of like, okay, this is what these guys were. And, you know, you could pick whatever, Unchained or Panama. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I mean, you definitely throw a boogie in there, maybe on the one or picture, but also, and then pick Panama or Jump or Unchained as the third, maybe for me anyway. I don't know what you guys think, but that to me is like, yeah. Listen to that song, and if you want to know anything about Van Halen, listen to these 3 songs, and that would definitely be one of them. I think Girl Gone Bad,
and I think it's accessible. You know, it's not like it's not heavier like House of Pain, although it still is kind of heavy, you know. But there's like, you know, there's, you know, cool parts in it, and there's like a breakdown again, then it speeds up again. But yeah, great. I mean,
that's their Cream.
What else can you say about 84?
It's a Cream song, you know. That's a song you could tell that they grew up listening to, like Cream. It's just like a jam, like a total jam.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. I think if I had to pick 3 songs to play to someone that never heard Van Halen, I think Girl Gone Bad would be in there for me as well, because it shows the jammy side of them, you know, because obviously they could construct a great pop song and you know, Ed was great at writing hits, but a really big part of why we all love Van Halen is because they were like a musician's band as well, you know, and when they would go off and do these jams, and they're untouchable, you know. I mean, you can tell that they grew up listening to other jam bands like Led Zeppelin and stuff. So, you know, I think Girl Gone Bad would have to be in there for sure.
It's just a perfect way to end the album too. It's just like you had all the little poppier stuff at the beginning, and then they like punch you in the face on the way out the door and just say, "Hey, don't forget, this is what we are." Okay, adios. See you.
That's actually a great way of looking at it, because, you know, obviously they start with 1984, the synthesizer piece, which I think really was a way of like, as soon as the needle drops, let some people know that, okay, we're going into a bit of a new era, you know, and we're bringing some different influences and stuff like that. But then, yeah, you're right. So, but just in case by the time anyone's halfway through the record, you know, that they're thinking, oh man, I don't know about all this synthesizer stuff and all of that. Then, they just sledgehammer you right at the end with Girl Gone Bad, and just to make sure everyone knows what they're really still doing, you know.
Don't forget.
And then you've got that part in Drop Dead Legs where for the longest time I thought he was using a bar, but he's really bending that string. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Just amazing, you know, innovative guitar playing, but in like the context of amazing songs. That's the thing about Eddie. It's amazing songs. There's probably better technical players out there, right? There is, but like you can't go home and I mean you're not driving around listening to like I don't know, maybe you are, I'm not, but like solo Steve Vai or something, right? Although I love Steve Vai, I love Vai in the context of a band more than him doing solo stuff. But like Eddie was like the whole package, man. It was and the bottom, the foundation. It was fantastic songs,
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's why he'll be remembered 100 years from now. On top of his playing, is just because those songs are just so good. And that was just like, I mean, he was just touched by the hand of God because those songs are just they're that good. You know what I mean? They still are now. It's like you listen to some of this stuff. I mean, I was listening to Little Guitars the other day. We were talking about that. I'm like, my God, this song is just amazing. And it wasn't even on there like that double greatest hits album. It's like how many bands have like they can't fill one greatest hits album? You know what I mean? They have like 3 or 4 hits, and then the rest are like,
it's garbage.
I mean, they have like literally they could fill a double 2 CDs with songs. And on that Best of Both Worlds that was released in the United States here, it was like it looked like the Frankenstein, the painting on the cover. It was a double one. It had like 3 new songs on it. I was looking at that the other day because I wanted to see if they had a remastered version of Little Guitars on there, and it's not even on there. And I'm like, this is like one of their greatest, maybe top 10 greatest songs, like, that people know everywhere and rock radio in the United States. I'm sure where you guys are, it's the same thing. It's a staple. It's like, one of the songs you always hear. And it's not even on that greatest hit on that great. I don't think it's on the other greatest hits album they put out, Volume 1 either. It's not even on there, right? That's crazy, That's insane. Yeah. So
the other thing, I'm sorry, go on. No, go on.
I want you to talk about this. The other thing about it is the tone, the guitar tone on 1984. To me, it's my favorite. It's clean with sustain. I don't even know how you can get the guitar to clean up that nice and have that sustain that he has. Take it away, Simon Hos.
Well, I think that I agree with you on that. And, we talk about it all the time. I think it comes down to just his hands, like he gets sustain out of his fingers. And because really, you're right, that the guitar sound on 1984 is not crazy distorted and gaining, it's just his plexi and he was always, whenever I used to turn the gain down to try and like kind of emulate the sound on that record, it's really, really hard to make the strings sing the way that he does it. It's really, really tricky to, as you say, get the sustain. And, I can only think that it's from the hands, a lot of people said too, that whenever you'd hear Ed just doodling around on the guitar, not plugged in, it sounded fierce, even just the strings, like he played kind of pressed hard and stuff. And so he wasn't letting the amp do all the work for him. He was really doing all the work himself. And that's why, that kind of a guitarist can plug into an amp that's not crazy distorted and still make it sound sustaining. And it's like an aural illusion instead of an optical illusion where, I'm sure if anyone else plugged into his rig at that time, they would just go, it would almost sound, it would sound much, much cleaner than Ed ever made it sound,
One of my
important, how important
favorite moments on 84 is when the beginning of Drop Dead Legs, when he turns the volume down, and it's kind of hard to recreate because you have, like Hos was saying, it's like clean, but it's still articulate. And then when he rolls it up right before the big banana, right, he rolls up the volume and you can just hear that Marshall just come to life, right? And it's just so hard to recreate live, man.
The first A chord at the beginning of that little growl it has. It was just that Flying V that he played for most of that album on pretty much everything except for and that probably had PAFs in it, I imagine, a 58. So they weren't like high output pickups either. They're probably like pretty low output at that point. So it's just amazing. I mean, that sustain, like you said, Hos, it's got to be from his hands,
Yeah. And speaking of that, when he would turn the volume down, he would start a song. Like Bottoms Up is another good example of that, where that volume knob goes up and the whole amp just roars into life. It's like a lion coming in and getting you, and to be able to go from that clean to that distorted without hitting any pedals that was Ed.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's hard to it's hard to recreate that like that. First of all, we haven't mentioned like the pitch shifting on that album, which is just I got a couple of years ago, a long time ago, I got that Eventide H9 primarily because I watched this video that had them demoing factory patches, and there were three factory patches that I wanted because I knew that like I didn't want to sit there and have to dial it in. I wanted to buy the pedal and have it be there, right? And they had a Panama pitch shift, they had a drop dead legs pitch shift, and then they had the delay for Women in Love. I'm like, okay, I got to try this out. So I got the pedal, I hooked it up, and like it's that pitch shifting, man. It's like this is it. This was like the missing ingredient in these songs, in a sense, you know.
Yeah. I think that was the 949 probably back then, the Eventide.
Yeah,
I think that's it. And it's kind of subtle on there. It's not overblown, overblown.
No, it's definitely not overblown. Yeah,
not
it
like
was used
5150. 5150
yeah.
is saturated with it there. But
he definitely had some fun with his toys, didn't he? Between 1984 and 5150, it's a completely different guitar sound and very processed,
Totally. But live Without a Net, it's not as processed like the album, nowhere near it, right?
That's absolutely not. Yeah, with Live Without a Net, and I'm sure all the the touring gigs was actually more like just his regular sound. It had, obviously had like a little bit of delay and things on it, but no, it wasn't over chorused and pitch shifted and stuff like that, which is good. I'm glad,
Yeah, definitely.
I've got a question I want to ask you guys, and it just came into my mind, Hos, when you were talking about the sustain that Eddie was getting in his hands and his fingers. We're all familiar with the famous clip of Clapton backstage in preparation for the farewell concert, and he's got the full SG there, and he's describing and he's kicking on the wah-wah. He's describing his technique and how he's sounding so delicately nice when he's got the volume just of the guitar turned down and he's playing delicately. And then he just slowly turns the guitar up a little bit more, and he crunches in there, Hos, with his pick, and the guitar just sounds on fire. So I'm thinking when you're saying that, so obviously Eddie would have been very familiar with that clip himself, surely, and thought, okay, so, and been inspired by Clapton through those Cream years, certainly to the point where he was just emulating just about everything that Clapton was doing then. Had a huge influence on him and being able to just have that one volume knob on his guitar, Hos.
Amazing, isn't it? Ed was one of the very few sort of guitar heroes, if you want to call it that, of that era, that actually did so much with so little, really, and you think that, there were guys using huge rigs and huge pedal boards and all sorts of stuff to get their sounds. And there's nothing wrong with that because everyone does it their own way. But what Ed could do, Ed didn't even have other pickups, just the one humbucker, whereas most guys would at least go to the neck pickup or something like that. But for the longest time, he just played it's like, no, this is my sound. It's like, like a beautiful old late 60s sports car. It's really just does one thing. But if you know how to drive really well, that sports car, all great racing drivers say that there's nothing purer than driving like a really great, like maybe like the old Ford GT40 or something like that from the late 60s, that kind of era. And
let me interrupt. Let me interrupt, bro, and just ask you this question, and I'd love Jimmy to answer it and John too, because I know that you guys are guitar players. So how confident are you, Hos, to have your rig set up and just change for effect your volume? Is that something that you do often when you're playing, or do you is that just something you do instinctively? You just change your volume without changing anything else on your on your effects through a song?
I do that sometimes. I don't do it as much as some other players do it, where they really are riding their volume the whole time. And I think that just comes from doing so many years of being a session guitarist, touring with different artists around the country, where I like my volume or knowing where it's set in one spot most
Okay.
of the time, because it gives me repeatability. You know, if we're doing a particular song of an artist and I start it, I just know that the volume's on 10 or the volume's off. And then so
Okay.
there's no chance of, but when I'm doing my own thing though, yeah, I'll write it a little bit for sure, you know. But generally speaking, unless I'm doing something like, you know, we're talking about the intro to Drop Dead Legs or the intro to Bottoms Up, or you can talk about 316, where obviously the volume's lower. Unless it's something like that, where it's really specifically you've turned down to play like 60 seconds of something, I tend to, like, during a song, I'm not writing my volume at all. It's just on 10. Yeah.
I love what Haas said, because I agree 1,000%. Right now I play a Kemper, but for years I played like real amps, you know, like a Splon, you know, which is basically a modern Marshall, like a Friedman or something. And you know, writing that, you know, so you're in a cover band, right? You roll into a place, okay? And I felt like, okay, I've tried this many times where you're in one room, and to get that sound that you want, right? When you roll down the volume, let's say you roll it down to 5, okay, for that one room, and it sounds great. Now, if you take that exact rig into another place, sometimes you're like, sometimes 5 is too much. Now it needs to be 4. So like Haas was saying, for like, just for you know, repeatability or confidence, what I do now that I've got the Kemper is, you know, like for something like Drop Dead Legs, I have a different. I'm not Drop Dead Legs, like Bottoms Up. I've got a different patch where I start off where I set that main amp in my profile at, instead of like at like volume, I don't know, 8, it's the gain is set back to like 6, right? So I create it, you know, every show it kind of sounds the same. And then when I go into the heavy part, I click on another patch, and then that same amp but louder. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I have consistency there, because I've tried the volume thing, and some rooms, you know, like you're some, you know, especially if you're doing something like the intro to what's that? Girl Gone Bad, right? Yeah, you need those notes to sound off, right? Yeah. And if, you know, sometimes if you have it, you know, like I said, you have the volume at 5, one show or one room, it's too distort, it's too gainy. Another night, it's too, like the notes don't ring right, you know, they ring out, they kind of die. So just to have consistency, that's what I tend to do. You know, although I mean, I would, but that's what I mean about how it's hard to recreate that volume swell with, you know, that he's doing there in that song. But you know, I like I love the Kemper. I love the consistency of it. It sounds like my Splons, like, you know, and this is just amps in general. Like, you know, everything is so variable. You roll into a room, and you know, let's say it's the same room. You play the same room twice, you know, twice in a row, like on a weekend. One night you got 80 people, another night you got 120 people, and then suddenly your amp sounds different.
Of course, that's right. Yeah. All of that stuff makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Whereas what I love about the Kemper is that every night I turn it on, I set it to, you know, to my profile that I use for like 80%, 90% of the show, and it's like, oh yeah, there it is. I love that thing. But we can talk about that later.
Hey, I'm so sorry, guys, but I'm actually going to have to jump off and get to my sound check, which is about a 90-minute drive for me today, because we got an early afternoon show. But
brother,
thank you so much for having me on it, even though it's unfortunately just for a short while. But let's do this again, where with all of you guys, and we'll do this for longer for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great show, man.
Yeah, you're killing it on Instagram.
Thank you very much. I'll post up some video later, so you guys will have to get to see it.
Please do.
Cheers, Hos.
Beautiful. And cheers everyone in the chat. Happy New Year. And I'll be listening to the show in the car. Have a good one.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
All right, great.
Thanks so much, guys. Cheers.
Wasn't that great, guys, to finally get Hos
on
live with us? As people probably are aware, you know, Hos is gigging quite a lot, obviously travels interstate, Johnny and Jimmy. So you know, we'll take them we'll take them for 5 minutes, half an hour, or 20 minutes, won't we?
Absolutely, man.
Exactly.
Hey, I want to ask you guys a question, and it's a continuation of this tone thing that we're talking about, this tone thing, this perpetual idea of tone that we have. Do you guys go through this often? And when it does happen to you, does it drive you nuts? Let me just paint a little picture for you. I got a 5150 combo about 6 months ago. It's so freaking loud, it's at work. And I've got lots of storage space at work, and I play it at work often, you know, crank it up, and it's just fantastic. And I've got that Eventide red thing that came out that gives you that 84, that balance tone on it.
Micro pitch.
So,
right? Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, the pitch, micro pitch. So one day, Jimmy, I can play and I can be doing some riffs, the black and blue riff, and it sounds great. The next week I go and play it, nothing's happened, and I go and play that same. It sounds like fucking shit.
That's tube amps. That's real. I mean, I think of tube amps as living things, right? It's a living thing. So like I've had that thing too, and like, you know, you're, like I said, you don't change anything. Okay, you turn it on, and one night you feel like you can play anything you want. There's no feedback. Everything's sustaining. And then the next night you feel like you're kind of like fighting your guitar and stuff. And I've been through that. And like, you know, for me, you know, having to play like, you know, we, in a night, like I said, we do like 40 plus Van Halen songs. So I you know, you kind of want your amp to be consistent. And, you know, the profile that I use for my Kemper is a profile that's off of a Splunk Quick Rod, which was my main amp for years. So when I played it, I was like, this sounds exactly like my Splunk. But that's kind of cured, for the most part, that whole thing for me where the amp sounds different every night, you know. But that's the thing. It's almost a beautiful thing. Like I said, it's like amps, you know, these tube amps are living things, and like one night it's in a good mood, the other night it's not. And I don't mean like it's not working. I just mean that like you feel like you're fighting that thing.
Yes.
You know? Yeah.
John,
especially
you've got
50. First of all, how heavy is that 5150? It's like, I think it's like 3 times the gravity pull of a black hole. Something like that.
It's heavier than my blues breaker, brother. Trust me.
For the longest time, I was in a band, you know, before all this Van Halen stuff. I was in a cover band like 20 years ago. And back then, you know, there weren't a lot of amps. There weren't a lot of amps, you know, out. You know, at that time, let's say like mid 90s, right? Even like early 2000s, you know, there was basically Marshall, Mesa, PV, and maybe Vox or Orange or something, right? There wasn't like all these boutique guys now, like Friedman or whatever, Spawn, stuff like that. So I had a 51 combo, and it was so goddamn heavy. I had to put casters on it. I bought these little I bought casters, drilled holes in the bottom of it, and I was like, oh, thank God. You know, but I still had to get it from the trunk of my car to like practice upstairs and stuff. But there wasn't anything else to get. You know.
Andrew, you know what I do when I turn it on and it sounds like, you know, I turn it right off.
Yeah.
And I walk into another room and I do something.
Watch TV.
Like R2, R3 locking nut says, you know, he's got a Furman voltage regulator. I have one of those too, the power conditioner, the Furman, and I don't. To me, it's still, you know, either it's there or it's not. I mean, it's like 5 minutes in. I'm like,
I had that issue with my Splon where one night, you know, I played all these different places, and I played this one bar two times, within like a span of a couple of months. And at the end of the night, it felt like when you have a problem with voltage and stuff, that's like your amp dying. It'll turn off, like it'll go off. So
wow.
I'm playing halfway through the song and like suddenly there's no volume and I have to turn it on and off again. And I talked to Scott Splawn. I'm like, what's this? He's like, that place must have horrible power. And he told me to get this Furman power conditioner. Now the thing is, you can't just, most Furmans are power strips. That's not what's needed. Like when those Furmans are like $100.
Yeah.
It's got like 12 plugs in the back. That's really a power strip. That's not a voltage conditioner. This thing that I have in the back of my car, I hopefully it'll last me the rest of my life. But it's a voltage. It gives you steady power, and it costs
the rack mounted, right?
What?
The rack mounted.
Yeah. I don't have it. Me personally, I don't have it rack mounted because I'll bring it in and stuff. But it's like $800. So you have to know really what you're buying. That thing. But that solved it. You plug the Splawn in the back of that, or any amp. You plug your tube amp in the back of that, and then it'll give you steady power. It's not an issue of like you feel like you're fighting your amp. That amp will die. You will not get volume out of it if you got bad power. And that's what happened. It was 95% through the show because it was taking in all this bad power and fighting it, and then towards the end of the night, it couldn't fight it anymore, in a sense, right? Okay. And that's why it was shutting down. And it happened to me twice at this one place. And that's when I thought it was just, something wrong with maybe my tubes or whatever. And then I went home and plugged it in. It was perfect, right? But it was just
no issues. So both you guys have got Kempers. So, and I know Hos has got a Kemper too, because Hos did that Melbourne guitar show through a Kemper, guys.
Right.
So the Kempers, John, has solved all those problems.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy's got a lot more experience with the Kemper than me. I just, he plays it every gig now. So, but yes, I don't know, because I never really thought of it that way with the Kemper. Like, you know what? Maybe because I never noticed it with the Kemper. Maybe I don't have that problem. You know what I mean? He's right though. You turn it on and it sounds the same every time. You know what I mean? I never really thought about it much. But with my 5153, the 50 watt that I have, that's the one where 5 minutes in, I'm like, okay, not today. Click, and I walk out. You know what I mean?
Wow.
But yeah, I think Jimmy, you're probably right. That's probably why I never noticed it, because when I turn on the Kemper, it sounds the same pretty much every time.
So the Kemper's reliable. Jimmy, you love the Kemper because it sounds good, B, it's reliable.
Yes, both those points. But the greatest point about this Kemper is that I also, before I had the Kemper, I had an Axe-Fx 2, right? Me and my buddy, we bought Axe-Fx 2s at the same time.
Yeah.
And this is a funny story. And we really wanted it to. I need to preface this by saying that we really wanted it to work.
Okay.
Serious. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. So,
because I bought mine because I saw this guy Rocco or something. I think his name was Rocco, some Italian guy, and he was doing he on YouTube. That's what kind of like prompted me to finally pull the trigger on this Axe-Fx. Is that I saw him doing 5150, and he had the best tone for 5150. It was like straight off the album.
Wow.
And he was like, I'm gonna, with the Axe-Fx, you can share your tones, right? So I remember I'm like, okay, I'm going to pull the trigger on this, right? And I was going to tell my friends, right, who are two other Splawn fanatics, right? So I'm like, dudes, I remember it was like a Monday, and I'm like, dudes, I got to be honest with you here. I'm at work, right? It's kind of slow. And I'm like, I think I'm going to pull the trigger on, I have to try this Axe-Fx too. And my buddy's like, me too. I'm like, you're going to get one too? So we both got one at the same time, okay? And I'll get to my point. The thing with the Axe-Fx is that you're really just, it's modeling, okay? Kemper is a little different in the sense that when you buy an Axe-Fx, you're stuck with what's in there. You can't load anything in it.
Oh.
Okay? It might have like 40, 50 amp models, right? But that's what you have. You can't load anything in it. You can load patches that are created off of those 40 models, right?
Okay.
Okay. But it's not like, but the thing about the Kemper is, let's say there's, first of all, there's completely free profiles. Okay. And what a profile is that you use that's what the thing's called, a Kemper profiler in a sense, right? And part of it, I've never done it myself because I'm not that tech savvy with mics and all that. But you basically make a copy of your amp, right? But the thing is that the beautiful thing about these Kempers is that if, let's say, you wanted an SLO, like I said before, like 90% of my show, I use the Splon patch that I've got, the Splon profile that I use, right? But then we do Pound Cake, and I switched over to a Soldano one, right? Now, let's say you wanted to get a Soldano, right? There's like so many people that create these profiles, and they're not expensive, $30 or whatever, and they'll send you like 40 profiles, right? Now, the beautiful thing is that if you don't like one guy's profile of an SLO, right, you can try another guy's or another guy's or 500 other people's profiles. Okay. You just load them in and test it. Oh man, I love this. Save, play, and that's it. Wow. I don't do any tweaking, right? I just load profiles in, and there's some tweaking, but like if you could just right away if a profile fits you, right? And that's the beauty of it, is that you're not stuck with what's in there. You can delete. When you buy a Kemper, it's got like, I don't know, 100, 120 profiles. Right now in mine, I sent this joke text to Conks a couple of weeks ago. Right now I got mine down to like under 800 profiles. Now I'm not using those all at once. Like I said, during a gig, I'm using 2 profiles, really.
2 out of 800.
But it's cool to have 800 profiles in there, right?
Jimmy's like this: crap, 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 good, crap, crap, crap.
Yeah, I deleted. I deleted about 200 of them. But that's kind of like what I mean, is like you're not stuck with what's in there. And like if let's say there's some guy they release a new amp that you want, right? And then you can try a profile of it, and I'm telling you, like the profile, there's the argument of I understand. Trust me, there's nothing sexier or cooler than a head and a cab. I've played those for decades live, right? I love that look. It's great. But I love the consistency of this thing. And there's so many onboard effects, right? If you can tweak I sound like a Comfort commercial, but you can tweak as much or as little as you want. And the beauty is that you're not stuck. It's not really modeling in the sense is that, modeling to me is like something that you buy and it's already in there. You can't change it. You have these models and that's it.
Whereas still got your X?
Huh?
Still got your X effects, or did you get rid of it?
So that's yeah. I played that thing. I played the Axe. Long story short, I got rid of it. But I played it. I played it for like, first of all, to edit it, I had to bring like my MacBook. Okay. If I ever wanted to edit it live. So I have a picture of me with my rig. It's the Axe effects with my MacBook on top of it, right? In case I want to edit it, right? Whereas the Kemper, you can just edit it on the fly there. But what happened was, up until then, I never knew what people were talking about when they were saying that they're getting lost in the mix of a band. I was like, I was always of the mindset that if you can't hear yourself in the mix of your band, turn up.
Yeah.
Right. But that's not the case. What happened was, I remember being at a practice once and and I gave it a fair shot. I played it live for about 10 shows over a span of like 4 months. Right. And I got to be honest, my friends hated it. Okay. My friends absolutely hated it. And which was a big factor, but also that I was at rehearsal one night and I'm like, I was blaring, but I couldn't make out what I was playing. And I'm like, this is what they mean, I think, about getting lost in the mix, right? So I ended up selling it, and for a couple of months, I went back. I had I was playing 5150s, the little 50 heads. I still have it. That's a great head, 5150 50-watt head. It's one of the best things, right? Still have it. Never going anywhere. But so I'm not against, I'm not against, tubes or anything. But I just love the consistency of it. And this is it. You turn it up. And I remember going to my very first gig with the Kemper, and my friends were going to be there. And I remember driving up there, and I'm like, oh man, these guys hate it. I mean, because I respect these guys. These guys know tone and they know sound, right? I'm like, if these guys hate it, I'm probably gonna have to sell this thing and just go back to tubes, even if I like it, right? And they loved it, and I loved it. And it's been like, I think I bought it around this time back in 2019. So it's been like 4 years that I've been playing this thing live.
I have two things to add about the Kemper. So, Jimmy, you said there's nothing more sexy than a head and cabinet, something like that, except at 2:30 in the morning when you have to
back
into your car. Yeah. And you know what? It's much sexier to put a little toaster like a Kemper, like the size of a toaster in there, and a 212 cabinet, right? That's one thing.
That's why I have the powered rack and the 212.
Yeah,
and ready to go.
That's
I do have an off-board pedal board that's got like a phase 90 or something. Just because I had them, I might as well use them. So you can connect it to the back of your there's an effects loop back there, and it works seamlessly with all that stuff. So.
And the only other thing I'll say about the Kemper is, and Jimmy turned me on to the Kemper, him and Les Paul, they were like bothering me for a year saying, you got to get a Kemper, you got to get it. So I finally got one. The only other thing I'll say is it's been around for 11 years, the Kemper now, I think 11 years. And nothing's changed in it at all.
That's the other thing.
And to me, that's like, well, they got it right the first time, man. You know what I mean? That's
with the Kemper, they're not asking every 2 years, you don't have to upgrade. They'll do like a system, like what do you call
it? Firmware.
Yeah. They'll do like a firmware thing where like a couple of firmwares ago, they gave you like some more delays, some more, pedals that you can put out in front or whatever. The cool thing about it is if you're looking at the Kemper, on the left side is stuff that you can put in front of the amp. And then you got your amp block, and then you've got stuff in your loop, right? But that was the beauty of it, is that they're not asking you every 2 years to buy another Kemper.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, if I was telling these guys, even if they released another Kemper at some point, right? That, let's say people, not so much me, but what people want is the ability to run two different amps at the same time. That's what the Kemper can't do that. It's just one profile, right? But like, I don't really need to run 3 amps at the same time or 2 amps at the same time. All my heroes ran 1 amp. I mean, what I mean by amp is like one, like a Marshall, not like Ed didn't play a Marshall and a Vox at the same time. You know what I mean? So I don't really need that. And like, what sounds good is good. And like, I would still play it. The thing is very versatile. It's really, easy to use. Like I said, you can tweak it as much or as little as you want. And, for me, it's not for everybody. I know that. And, I'm only really talking about it because, you guys kind of brought it up, but I can't lie and tell you I don't like that thing. I love that thing.
Yeah, it makes your life a lot easier. I have a Vox amp in the back. I haven't turned it on since I got that. I have the profiles that Jimmy gave me for Vox, and it sounds like a Vox.
Isn't it amazing? Maybe what we should do, guys, at the top of the show, we said that we would get together on the next 5150 show and talk gear a little bit more. And clearly everybody is still fascinated by it because we've still got 20 people watching us. And we had Les Paul Gibson on the Christmas show, didn't we? And he's a gearhead too. So maybe we should invite him on that show as well, guys. Maybe we should get him involved, and okay. I'll leave that up to you guys because you're in touch with him regularly. But this Kemper thing's intriguing. I think it's an intriguing tool. I think it's certainly got me interested, John.
I agree 100%. Ever since these guys turned me on to it, it's just great. I think I never thought I'd feel that way about it, but it just makes your life a lot easier. And then you hear people like, I heard Mark Knopfler and he's, a tone guy. I heard he was using one on his last tour. You know what I mean? So you see them on stage everywhere now. I was watching Jimmy Buffett.
It's a German.
Yeah,
it's German, isn't it?
German, yeah, which kind of scared me because I have one of those German Mini Coopers now. BMW makes them.
Yeah.
And oh my God, what a piece of shit that car! It's like every time I turn around, it's like $1,200 to fix something on that car. Just the way it was designed was horrible, but it's good to see they got the Kemper right though.
Yeah. I sell German power tools, Festal German power tools, and they're the best power tools, on the market. So from my perspective, German engineering, German manufacturing, pretty good.
Except for the Mini Cooper, the new one. There's videos.
Well, they should have kept making the Mini Cooper where it originally was made in England.
I agree 100% on that one. I agree. Kept it simple, right? Yeah, but but they got this thing right. It's made really well. And I'm telling you, it's unbelievable how you just a touch of a button, you got a Vox sound. You know what I mean? It's like or Marshall. It's like
they have this function called morphing, where you can hit you need the control, the pedal board controller thing, and like I use it for Unchained, where I'll play Unchained, right? And then some guy created this guy. I gotta give him a shout out, Wendell Walker. He created this flanger that I sold my EVH flanger. This flanger that he's got in the Kemper is so fantastic, right? So what I do is, I'll play Unchained, and then I'll you can set up that button to be what's that conch, like stationary or what you can either hit it or you can rest your foot on it, because you ever see Eddie do it where he puts his foot on the pedal and then it makes that sound, then he takes it off and it stops, right? He doesn't hit it twice to turn it off, right? So anyway, so you hit the pedal and you can set it to morph, where it takes your sound and it'll add the flanger, but it can also do like 10 other things at the same time, all at different rates. When I use it, because I want that flanging to be loud like it is on the album, right? It's my regular patch. I'll hit it, and what it does is it'll trigger the flanger, but it'll also give me a solo boost of like 3 decibels. So just on that flanging, it's loud in the mix. And then when I take my foot off, it's back to that regular profile. I hit it again, and it morphs like instantaneous. And you can set it like you could have a slow morph or you can have an immediate morph, and it's cool.
Holly wants to know what about the new drill sound button.
Well, yeah, I have a drill. I have a Makita that I use.
They don't have a profile for that yet. Right?
They don't have a button for that.
Good one, Holly. Yeah.
Go and model the right, correct Makita model drill too.
Right, exactly. Right.
I have 2 drills over at Craig Stavko's, man. That would save me some money.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been live with you guys for 2 hours. We've had the pleasure, obviously, and honestly, the enthusiasm. I think Holly made a comment before about Jimmy, his infectiousness, his love for Van Halen. Obviously infects everybody in a positive way for it, and we love Jimmy for that. Don't change, brother. Don't change, whatever you do.
He won't.
If you go to EVH Con, it's not just me. I mean, that's the thing. You people love Van Halen. Like sometimes people are like, at my very first job, I had a friend, right? And we'd go out to lunch and stuff, whatever. And this guy, he's a really good dude, but like he was never into music. How that was like, how could you not be in? I remember saying, so what are you into? He goes, I don't really, and he's at this point, he's like 25, right? He's not like 13, right? And he lived 25 years not listening to, not into music. I was like, how is that possible? You know what I'm saying?
I agree with you.
Over your, Van Halen, love. I'm like, no, man, that's my thing. I go, I feel bad for you for not having like that, a passion like that. And that's what everybody, I mean, if all these people that are watching, they wouldn't be here if they didn't have that passion that you and Conks and me and Holly and everybody, Janice, everybody,
Yeah. Look, I'm a little bit like you guys. You know, when I was a young guy growing up, especially, and even now when I meet people and you talk to people, and you inevitably always the conversation steers to, you know, what are you listening to, what do you like, and stuff like that. Now, when people tell me that they're into reggae, and I don't particularly know a lot about reggae or a lot about jazz, but when people are in fire, John, because they're into jazz, you know, I dig what they're into because they love it. You know, they love music. You know, it could be bluegrass. You know, it could be opera. You know, I dig it. We've got that same plateau of experience. But as Jimmy said, when someone turns around and you meet some of these people, I say, "Nah, I don't really give a shit about music." It's like, okay, you and I cannot be friends.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
Like, no, I don't think so.
It was like, I remember being a little kid, and I'm like I said at the earlier in the show, the thing that really got me playing guitar was not Eddie. I didn't know Eddie at this point. The guy that really got me playing guitar or wanting to play guitar was Gary Richrath in REO Speedwagon.
With his Les Paul,
REO Speedwagon, right? So
yeah.
So like when I first heard those songs, I was like, man, like I'm a little kid, but I had that thing where I'm like, I gotta learn how to play this stuff, right? Now I can't imagine how like you can hear some music and just be like, whatever music you're into, like not be into music. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's not just Van Halen, you know, other bands, you know.
Yeah. I look, I solely, I dig where you come from. You know, I was working years ago, 6-7 years ago, with this young guy, and he was really, really talented. You know, he was good at his work. He was one of the best young guys I've ever had the pleasure of working with. You know, guess what, Jimmy? He would turn up on time, and he wasn't taking days off. So if a young guy's doing that, straight away they're a winner, aren't they? Yeah, you know. Right. And then we got talking about music and stuff like that, and he was into a lot of that Swedish death metal stuff, you know, and you know, I know a bit about that stuff, but you know, do I listen to it? No, but you know, and then he was showing me photos of his rigs and his guitars, you know, his 7-string drop C or drop B guitars and all that, and it's like, you know, and the guy's just on fire, like you and I have been here, guys, talking about stuff. I couldn't shut the guy up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great, you know.
It's infectious.
Yeah. Whatever you're. It just seemed like, and I love this guy. He was a good dude. But I was like, he was like an ex-baseball player. You know, he was in the minors and stuff. Really good dude. But like, it was just so foreign that he didn't like music. And you know, I've got some other friends that really aren't into music. And like,
he could have even said, "Oh no, I just listen to the radio." Even if he said that, that would have been acceptable.
Oh yeah, what I mean, like he wasn't listening. I couldn't. My head could not. I'm like, you're not into any. I didn't want to. I don't think at that time I pressed the issue, but I remember like driving home, like that kid doesn't listen to any music.
Yeah, how boring is your life?
Listen to music.
I have a term for people like that. You know, generally that I always use it with my wife. It's like they don't have interests really in much of anything. Certain people like that. They don't like music. They don't just like. I call them worker bees. I go because there has to be some people that are worker bees, and then you have to have the people that are creative and that have interests in things like that. And some people are just meant to be worker bees. Some people don't have interest in great things, and that's fine. That's cool if they, you know, they like that. I'm cool with that. You know what I mean? But I call them worker bees. You know.
Oh, I'm glad we don't have any worker bees here on this channel in the chat. We don't have any worker bees. We've got people, Jimmy and Johnny, who are passionate.
Yeah. Everybody here is Van Halen bee.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Bumblebees. Right.
Yeah. Van Halen bumblebees.
There you go.
Folks, we're going to be back later on the channel with the Rock Professor and Brad. We're going to be doing our tribute. The British Electric Blues show is going to be doing a tribute to Jeff Beck. So come back and hang out with us if you want. We're going to be doing that for an hour and a half. But I promise, Jimmy, John, and maybe Gibson Les Paul Gibson will come back soon. We'll organise a date and we'll spend a couple of hours.
He just texted me talking about gear. He just texted me that he just got in his Analog Man Phase 90 mod thing. Yeah.
Well,
send it over to me, bro.
So that might be 2 shows, ladies and gentlemen. So
you're right.
that'll definitely be 2 shows.
He will absolutely come on. There's no question. Yeah.
Oh,
definitely.
Okay. I'm going to say thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us, especially Hos. If you're watching Hos, if you're still traveling to the gig, bro, thank you for coming on. We love you, brother. And I'm going to ask John and then Jimmy to say the last words, and then we'll cruise, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I enjoyed talking about 1984. Next year, let's plan a big blowout. Go track by track, do something. Let's start planning it now. Have a big party for that. And next time we didn't talk about Wolfgang's and the EVH gear, the future of that company. We got to hit on that. We'll talk about that, and then we got to do some VH little trivia stuff that I've been wanting to do too. So we got another good show planned coming up. And then
and another sneaky little thing too. I won't mention it now, but John's going to mention another little segment that we're going to be doing here on the 5150 show too, that you guys will definitely want to participate in. It's another little tangent that we've got too. So come back next time, and John will tell you what that is.
Yeah, well, which one are you talking about? You and I talked about a couple of things the other day.
Yeah, the one where he was. I don't want to give it away.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much either. So just tune in next time. Next time.
Yeah.
Sure
Tune in next time.
I'll blow it. So we'll leave it at that.
Jimmy, you got the last word, brother.
Okay. Like Conk said, man, thanks for everybody, tuning in. This is the first show of 2023. Thanks to Andrew for like setting this up. I love coming on, love talking Van Halen, as you can probably guess. 84, it's a masterpiece. If you guys are interested, go to my YouTube page, just my name, Jim Vombas, basically. And you can see a video of my band. We did 84 start to finish about a year ago, around Eddie's birthday, like October 21st, around there. October of 2021, I should say. And
I'll attach that link to this video. If you're watching a replay and you want to know where that is, I'll attach it to this video, guys.
Okay. And I got to put in a little shameless plug because I have an important gig on Eddie's birthday. We're playing down the street here in Fairfield on the 26th. If you guys are if you're in Connecticut, if you're in that area, please, go. It's at Park City Music Hall. Come down. I think tickets are like $10. I think I saw something with Janice is going to be there too. So thank you, Janice. Thank you. You just, come down, come say hi, stay for like an hour. We start at 8:00. You don't have to stay all night. We'll be done by 11. We're going to do Van Halen 1 start to finish in the second set. So if you're in the area, man, come down. A shameless plug over. I want to thank everybody here for like even caring about what all three of us here say in the Hos. It was great seeing Hos on. The guy is phenomenal. He's the best. And if Andrew wants to do this gear show coming up, then by all means, man, as you can tell, you can't shut me up about gear. Cox and I and Les Paul, we talk about gear every day in this chat.
6:00 in the morning, the texts start coming through. My wife's like, somebody texted you. I go, oh, it's Jimmy.
Right on.
He doesn't sleep, I don't think.
No, I'm pretty much up at 6:00 every day.
Now we're used to it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, we'll definitely plan that, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the notification buttons and stay tuned, and we'll do everything we can. We'll notify you through our social media accounts too when that's going to go ahead. But as you would appreciate, it's about getting everybody together on a time. This time slot seems to work well. We've had a lot of shows around this time slot, so I don't think we'll be pretty much different from a. It's a Sunday here, so it's a Saturday where you guys are. So if Jimmy doesn't have a gig and Johnny's not doing anything, we'll be back here in a couple of weeks. You guys are awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you for hanging out with us. I'm not going to name everybody in the chat, but thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, let's play
Nice.
the video. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Hold that up. Hold that up, brother. Oh.
Wow. There isn't
my
anybody
gosh.
on the planet pickier about 5150s than Conks. So that's got to be pristine if he likes it. And
Yeah,
that
I like
Conks,
this
am I right to say that your biggest problem with people's 5150s is the upper horn?
Yeah, pretty much. That's always a dead giveaway, right? If you got a good one or a bad one,
You built that one.
upper horn. Yeah, I mean, I sanded crazy for like 8 months. You know what I mean? To get it to where I was happy with it. But I think a lot of listen. I don't want to hold everybody up here, but that's the thing that people leave out. Everybody pays attention to like the paint and everything like that, but you really got to pay attention to the shape of the body. That's a dead giveaway. You can have the greatest paint job. It's like, I always say, like, if you're going to make a Dukes of Hazzard car, you got to use a Charger and not a Challenger. You know what I mean? It's like, you got to shape it right. But luckily Chris Locke and those guys at Locke, they got a good body out there now. So you don't really have to do anything with that. But this one, I did a lot of work. This is a Kramer 1984, actually, but I spent a lot of time on this thing. About 8 months just sanding it and looking at pictures and comparing it and stuff like that. So, and I had the paint, the GM paint, the 7753. I used that on this one, and it came out nice. It sounds good, so it's pretty good. If you see pictures of it, it looks pretty good in the pictures. So, anyway,
right.
That's it.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So, that's
speaking about the General Lee, the General Lee, you got to have the right model. It's got to have that flag on there too. We don't want to be political, but at the end of the day, it's got to have the right paint job.
Exactly.
It's it is what it is.
That's my best analogy. My best analogy though is like you're gonna make a General Lee or car, you got to use the Charger, not a Challenger. So if you're gonna make a 5150, you got to make the body shape like a 5150, which is a unique shape. It's not like the standard guitar, that Kramer made at the time. So you got to really kind of shape it. There's certain things. But we'll save that for another show. But I know one of them is like a shark fin. This one's got to be like a shark fin. Pointy. See that one, the lower one.
Oh.
I'm not even done with this one yet. I still have to do. You can see the back on it here. See.
Oh.
I haven't finished it quite yet, but it's got to be like a shark fin there. That one, these hips on it, you got to shape. But I don't know. You can go crazy with this stuff. But anyway,
stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, because we've got more coming on the 5150 show. God bless, keep out of trouble, and thank you for hanging out with us. We're out of here.
All right, guys. Thanks, everybody.